Why, hello there. This is JoPaddy, and tonight I'll be reading you a very special sleep story called Wonder. Before we begin, I would like you to let your mind drift with me for just a moment. I wanted to tell everybody that I spent my 20s and my early 30s as an actress and a model, and then I had given that up to spend more time being a mom. And I enjoy that much more. I've met a lot of interesting people along the way in my path, and then I also decided to go to college. So I went to college and I got my degree in art. But I also studied science, and I am in awe over our cosmos. And that brings me to this story tonight. This story was told by someone named Matthew McConaughey. I don't know him on a personal level, but from what I do know of him, he is a wonderful man. So when I heard him tell this story, I was in such wonder over it myself that I couldn't wait to share it with you guys. And I wanted you to know that I've added some of my own words to this and my own scientific findings, and I think that that makes this story even better. There is so much more in this big universe of ours. I hope you enjoy this story, and I hope I've inspired you to just look up to the stars and drift off to dreamland. And I thank you for joining me tonight. Let's ask the question, how often do we ponder the depth of the present moment, the one we're in? I mean, how often do we really feel with what's happening within and around us, allowing ourselves to be moved and to be inspired, to be filled with gratitude and full of mystery and the beauty of this universe and of this life? In this past year, I spent a lot of time by myself, and I've kind of isolated myself because, well, sometimes people just, they let themselves go there and life takes over, and sometimes you just feel like there's nothing you can do. So you kind of put yourself in a place that you never thought you would go and do that to yourself, but you'll eventually come out of it and it's going to be okay. And I wanted to tell you guys that while I was isolating myself and spending all that alone time, I was able to, let's see, how can I put this? I was able to learn more about myself and about other people, and I just kind of did some studies around me, and I kind of analyzed things more. And you know what? During those times of my off and on isolation and alone times, I came away with the thought of, wow, to me, God's backyard is bigger than what I thought. Believe it or not, this story, Wonder, reminds you of how many times you did fear the dark and of unknown places, only to find out that once you've entered it, there's nothing to fear on the other side. Instead, it's something to be in awe of, something quite magical. Like when we were kids, it was easy. I mean, think about it. When we were young, nothing really mattered. We were so carefree, and maybe you had like 3 flavors of ice cream to pick from, but every time you went to get ice cream, you were in love with whatever flavor you got. And I would write with chalk on the sidewalks and skip rope for fun and not for exercise or workout. I'd play jacks and skip stones across the waters, catch lightning bugs, and catch simple little snowflakes on my tongue. And this was all before technology. I was an only child growing up, and my vacations, there were no video games or cell phones, and there were some pretty long car rides. And if I got restless or loud, my dad would say, "Don't make me pull this car over." I'm sure you guys have all heard that before. But there were simple times, nonetheless, and less stress. And in the end, everything back then seemed to be a source of amazement and a cause for joy. But somehow, for some reason, as we get older, we lose touch with that childlike fascination. And I like to sometimes call that or say, we grow up to learn worse. But tonight, I hope to send you off with peaceful dreams with that very thing in mind. So close your eyes and get cozy under your covers. And here we go with our story. And as we begin our story, it just might rekindle that sense of wonder. It was the rattle of an antique telescope that grabbed her attention on that quiet night. Zoe sat up in bed and looked around the room, a soothing breeze drifting through an open window, and with that light breeze, a rustling of a collection of drawings pinned to the wall. Starlight cast a soft glow across the room, giving faint detail of the shapes of a comforting place. A troop of stuffed animals piled in the corner, organized perfectly from big at the bottom to tiny at the top, and a stock of prized possessions sitting on Zoe's shelf, dinosaur figurines and picture books, and a papier-mâché giraffe. Purple thumbtacks held some of her finest little drawings on the wall. Green birds, blue bears, and red fish, and cardboard models of the planets that hung from the ceiling by a string, from Mercury to Neptune, and even Pluto for good measure. She knew they weren't to scale, but such are the limits of a 7-year-old's bedroom. In the bed next to Zoe is her little sister Andrea, who is sleeping so soundly. Then Zoe heard it again, that curious rattling, and it sounded like it was coming from outside. So she wrapped herself in a fuzzy blanket and grabbed a hold of her favorite stuffed animal, Snug the dinosaur, who was baby blue with green spikes, wide eyes, and a friendly smile. She snuck into the hall and quietly went down the stairs, her blanket draping behind, and Snug the dinosaur bumping down the steps. Zoe slipped out the back door and onto the wooden deck. She wasn't sure how, but the breeze felt warm and cool all at the same time. A field of brilliant stars were across the sky, like a canopy of lights. They suspended above, so large and luminous, and Zoe felt she could almost reach out and touch them. She stared out across the small circular lake. Starlight glimmered on the rippling water, and delicate waves lapped up against the rocky shore. A thick wall of trees wrapped around the perimeter, leaves gliding down their branches in a tranquil position. Across the lake, faint lights of cottages were along the shoreline, each sending along a quiver along the surface of the water. A gentle gust of wind picked up. Zoe was enchanted by the rustling of a billion leaves, like a beautiful, rousing whisper. And as the wind subsided, the leaves settled to stillness in the trees and on the ground, like an orchestral harmony fading to silence. All Zoe could hear was the common wash of the waves curling up on the rocks, the drift of the breeze coasting through the trees, and the occasional call of the loon echoing across the lake. It was so quiet and so peaceful. It felt as if time had paused in a single marvelous moment that was stretching on forever. A narrow wooden dock extended into the lake, and in the darkness that appeared to hover a few feet above the water, Peering into the eyepiece of an antique telescope was Grandpa, a tussle of grayish-white hair, reading glasses folding into his pocket, and a stack of books sat by his side. He rifled open a book, showing his flashlight, pushing a page. He discovered something of note and returned to the telescope to inspect the cosmos. Then, as Grandpa looked into the eyepiece, a smile upon his face, like the grin of Galileo himself. Zoe climbed onto the bench that hung from two chains attached to a sturdy archway, and she cuddled up with Snug the dinosaur. She reached her leg down onto the floor, easing the bench into motion. As it rocked back and forth, she laid back and cast her sights into the stars. Grandpa noticed Zoe on the bench, so he left his post to come say hello. "Well, if it isn't my two favorite people," he said with a smile, joining Zoe and Snug on the bench. Grandpa pushed his heel down against the floor and gave the bench a nice heave. He and Zoe leaned back together, rocking back and forth, gazing up at the heavens. "What are we looking for?" Zoe asked. "Venus," Grandpa replied, pointing skyward to a bright object. "There's a meteor shower starting any minute." As her eyes wandered the constellations, Zoe explained that sometimes her mind would start racing and wouldn't stop. She would worry about stuff that might happen, or things that are crummy or bad or scary or sad. "My love," said Grandpa, "stuff that might happen in the future can't happen right now because we're in the present, not the future. And the trick is to focus on what is happening in this instant. There's so much taking place all around us in this very moment. So much it's amazing and wondrous and wonderful." "Like what?" Zoe asked. "Well, let me see," Grandpa said, staring off into the stars. And just then, a dash of light streaked across the sky and a line of white sailing amidst the stars, when just like that, it faded to nothing, like an ephemeral penstroke disappearing as soon as it imprinted. Zoe cuddled into her blanket and, staring up at the stars with anticipation, another meteor appeared, and then another, and then two tiny ones paired together. They arrived with different intensities, some short and faint, others long and bright. They voided into the same direction, crossing from upper right to lower left. But they danced at different heights, some higher in the sky, some lower, towards the horizon. Zoe and Grandpa watched as the spectacle ensued, delighted by this rare display of this atmospheric firework. Sometimes a few moments of idleness would pass, then a series of 2 or 3 meteors would appear, a flurry of fragments soaring across the sky, fleeting in silence. "In this moment," Grandpa continued, "our planet is passing through a trail of debris left behind by a comet long ago. And as those pieces of icy rock get swept up into our atmosphere, they light up, sending a tail of glowing hot air streaking behind before crumbling into dust. Right now, miraculous things are transpiring up there. The greatest mountain in the solar system rises from the surface of Mars, peaking 16 miles high. An ocean of liquid metallic hydrogen churns under a haze of gases on Jupiter. Millions of comets roam the far regions of the solar system, leaving trails of icy dust on their journey. In this moment, the light from the bright star just overhead, called Sirius, is reaching Earth after traveling at 186,000 miles per second across 8 light years of space. So the light you are seeing now, that twinkling glimmer in the sky, left the star before you were even born. Just imagine how far that starlight traveled just for you to see it. As we swing on this bench, we're perched on a planet, rotating on its axis while orbiting the star, the center of the solar system, and that entire system is itself orbiting a galaxy at a speed of hundreds of thousands of miles per hour. So in a sense, right here, right now, we're galactic travelers on this vessel we call Earth. Our sun is circling the galaxy with 200 billion other stars, all bound together by gravity in a vast spiral disk like a stellar city. And our galaxy is just one among billions in the universe, like a single flake in a cosmic snowfall. They are everywhere our telescopes can see, strewn upon space and arranged into giant groups in the galaxies. So in this moment, you are sitting on Earth in the Milky Way galaxy, in a community of galaxies that has the lovely name of Leniakea. So as we relax on this August night, a beautiful balance of things are happening. Events unfolding every reach and depth of this planet. All at once, it is both autumn and spring, day and night, dawn and dusk. Clouds are converging and clearing, storms looming and dispersing, temperatures heating and cooling, tides rising and falling. Rainbows are reaching over canyons, jet streams flowing over mountains. In New Zealand, misty clouds are gathering over beaches of black sand. Off the coast of Portugal, waves rising as high as hills are rolling calmly towards the shore. In Venezuela, a gentle flow of water is cascading down a breathtaking waterfall called Angel Falls, the highest in the world. That's happening right now as we sit here. Everywhere on this earth, water is freezing into ice, melting into liquid, and heating into vapor. It is swirling in lakes, swelling in oceans, and evaporating in the skies. It is gathering into clouds, raining down on hills and fields, dripping down from leafy trees, trickling into streams, flowing down rivers, seeping into aquifers, and bubbling up from springs. In this moment in time, there are millions of species sharing this world with us, a harmony of living things dwelling at every mountain peak and ocean floor. Somewhere out there, a falcon is gliding at great heights. A starfish wading into tidal depths. A butterfly is merging from a cocoon. A lemur swaying from a branch. Lynx is padding down a hill. A moose is wading in the marsh. A flamboyance of flamingos is lounging in a lagoon. A kaleidoscope of butterflies fluttering in the fields. A school of angelfish is roaming in the tropical shallows. A colony of penguins huddling on Antarctic ice. A pride of lions is lazy there in the grass. A pod of dolphins playing in the Pacific waves. In the waters off the Western Cape, humpback whales are wandering in murky serenity, sweeping and rolling, wise and graceful. On the open plains of Texas, longhorns are idling in pastures, some grazing, some lazing, and some sleeping in the hush of night. Just across the lake, a raft of loons are resting on the water from an overnight journey on the Great Lakes to the Gulf of Mexico. On the island of St. Helena, there lives an adorable 187-year-old tortoise named Jonathan, the oldest known living land animal in the world. And at this moment, he's probably lumbering across the grassy field, his eyes blinking wisely, and his head poking down from time to time to jump on some grass. Lush landscapes flourishing with roots and trunks, branches and leaves, stems and petals. Why, there are trees, bushes, and flowers sprouting and budding in every patch of soil and sliver of sunlight across the lands. Seagrass is covering saltwater meadows, moss carpeting riverside stones. African violets are blooming in Serengeti woodlands. Japanese maple shedding leaves in the Yamanashi gardens. Vines are climbing up fences, ferns shading forests, daisies swaying on roadsides, aspens rising from the valleys. As we sit by our beloved lake, human beings all across this globe are doing every curious thing that people do. They're seeing sights and thinking thoughts. Mothers and fathers are singing lullabies to newborn sons and daughters. A student learning a language. A singer humming a ballad. A teacher is imparting knowledge. An artist revealing beauty. Snorkelers are exploring underwater worlds. Scientists researching microscopic rounds. Athletes are running laps. Mountaineers scaling slopes. Gardeners are planting seeds. Big brothers skipping stones. Travelers boarding trains. Surfers catching waves. Ball players are throwing passes. Cooks stirring sauces. Poets penning verses. Farmers picking berries. Skiers carving hillsides. Leaders giving speeches. Doctors hearing heartbeats. And kids building forts and jumping rope and playing tag. At this very moment, an adventurer is arriving home after a long journey with the rope tales to recount to the one he or she loved. Someone is daydreaming under a cover of clouds. Someone else reveling in the splendor of sunlight. Someone is floating freely in zero gravity. Someone else cannonballing off a diving board. Someone is peering down at a caterpillar. Someone else is staring up at a mountain. People are calculating equations, baking souffles, and watching sunsets. There's somersaulting and storytelling, dancing and singing, working and playing, rising and sleeping. At this precise second, someone out there is seeing the shapes of animals in clouds. Someone else is blowing out candles on a cake. Someone else is playing with a tiger cub. Think of the thousands of languages being spoken, millions of words assembled into endless variations of stories, expressions, answers, and questions. Such an abundance of souls roam about this earth, a boundless array of human minds and faces, yet all of us sharing a common journey, each of us wishing and wondering, breathing this air and seeing the sky. Just imagine the variance of hearts that are beating, lungs breathing, minds musing. Consider the kisses being kissed, dreams being dreamed, and lives being lived this very instant. We can't be sure who or where. We are certain that at this moment, another human being is gazing up at the sky, mesmerized, just like us. And since at any given moment, the present moment is all we ever have, in this instant, in this magnificent moment, we have everything. And with that, Zoe and Grandpa sat in silence for a few minutes, allowing the universe to unfold in all its patience and beauty. Lake ripplings, the trees swaying, the sky expanding, the stars shimmering. They listened as the delicate waves curled up against the rocks, the breeze coasting through the trees, and the call of the loon echoed across the lake. Venus abided in the sky, calm and radiant, as if watching over the night. And then a last meteor soared above the horizon, a slow, purposeful beam of light, streaking splendidly like the final note from a majestic symphony. And young Zoe, inspired and exhausted, was ready to doze off to sleep, her eyelids heavy, her breath soft and deep. Grandpa guided her back inside, up the stairs, and into her room. She climbed into bed and allowed her head to fall into her pillow. Grandpa tucked her in and with a kiss on her forehead, wished her wonderful sleep. Zoe closed her eyes and began drifting off into an ocean of gratitude and wonderment, rolling and flowing in her heart. She thought of porch lights rippling on water and comets sailing around the sun. She thought of her favorite place on the planet, swinging bench on a cozy deck by a quiet lake under shining stars. She thought warmly of her dear grandpa and all of his magical stories about the universe. Her imagination floating between coins and fountains, clouds and skies, meteors over mountains, and whales in the tides. Her breath eased into a tender rhythm, like a cascade of comfort washing over her. Each inhale embraced each exhale, a release. She delighted in the softness of her bed, in the quiet stillness of the moment. Starlight glowed in through the window, and the soothing sounds of the breeze and the waves whispered in from outside. Cozy under the covers with Snug, the dinosaur, breathing slowly, peacefully, and enwrapped in the warmth and safety of her own bed. Zoe drifted off to the sounds of sleep and the sweetest of dreams. Good night and sweet dreams.